Assalamu alaikum, all the viewers as in Niadin, as usual, every Saturday, 6 o'clock till 7 o'clock in UK time. Mr. Mohsen is always with me. We come live, and Mr. Mohsen is always talk to issues. So I think I'll let Mr. Mohsen come in to start his program. I'll be in and out.
Thank you, Faheem. Thank you, everyone, again for joining in. Just as always, thank you, everyone, for your kind words, for your support. I'll just quickly recap on last week. So last week we looked into a bit about the coronavirus and how it's affecting the young people who have been at home, because a lot of the mainstream education and school places have been closed. We know people have been facing a lot of difficulties, whether it's mental health, whether it's education. And we know a lot of parents were concerned that with them being out of mainstream education for so many months, when things do hopefully get back to normality, they didn't want them to be set back. So it was something we did try to cover, and we did have some options and solutions there. And the brother that come on last week, Yasser, was a tutor, and he did also offer his own number and stuff as well. What brings us on to today, it is from a couple of weeks ago, we did a program on racism and why racism still exists. We are a global audience. We do talk about global issues. So with the Black Lives Matter movement, it may not affect us directly, but it is someone's struggle. And it is a struggle that many ethnic minorities face around the world. So before I get into it properly, I'd like to introduce the first-time guest to the Mindset program, Mr. Murat Yalçın.
Yeah, thank you, Mohsan. Thank you for having me. I'm joining in from the Netherlands. So my name is Murat Yalçın. I'm a Turkish Dutch guy, and my profession is I have my own security company, which I'm very busy with. And thanks for having me again.
No problem, Murat. Thank you for joining us as well, man. What we're wanting to kind of do today is, I know we've touched on the ethnic minorities within this country and within America, but I wanted to get your perspective to see, is it a wider issue within Europe and even abroad? One of the things that I wanted to talk about a lot today was I watched a program just today, and there is a school in South London where they're trying to end racism, and it was a brilliant program, very well produced, and it's actually quite emotional as well. So it came from, I think, similar project was trialed out in America first. And I know in the previous one, we spoke about our own opinions. So it might have been through influence, lack of education and things like that. And what they discovered with this one was there was a year 7 group, so 11 and 12-year-olds. And a test was taken place by them all, which was created in Harvard. And it turns out that there's also a thing called unconscious bias. So these lot of children, how they speak and think, they're colorblind, they don't look at people's race or color, and they're very well integrated. And even that high school is 50% white and 50% ethnic minorities. But after doing this test, they were actually very surprised that unbiased or unconsciously, there could be discriminations they were doing without actually knowing and thinking about it. So it seems to be the system we're in, even if outwardly they're not as outspoken as some small groups that we face, that it still could be an issue. And I think throughout the program, I'm going to just dip into bits that I saw and liked from the show, which are good learning curves for us as well. But for someone like myself, Murat, when I look at something like the Netherlands, I think, and I consider it to be a quite liberal country, because I know there's loads of things that people can do there. They care about the environment a lot, recycle a lot more. But I'm not necessarily living there. This is just an outside perspective. But in terms of discrimination or ethnic minorities or the struggles you guys go through, does it actually still exist in the Netherlands? Is it a concern there?
Yeah, of course. I mean, the image which you have of Holland is true as well, but there's also a different side, of course. And I think racism is a global issue, a global problem. So it also exists in the Netherlands.
Okay. And what sort of ethnic minorities are there generally? Because I know in England it's different. We have people from Afro-Caribbean, Bangladesh, India region, Pakistanis, and as the years have gone on, Eastern European now as well, and parts of Africa too. So what are the ethnic minorities within the Netherlands?
Or there are also, despite being a small country, there are a lot of ethnic minorities and a lot of nationalities in Holland, because Holland has always been a country of immigrants as well. But mainly it's focused, of course, with the Turkish, Moroccans, Surinamese, people from the Antilles, but also Spanish people, Italian people, Somalian people. I mean, it's very, there are a lot of ethnicities and yeah, them all combined makes us feel or not feel Dutch in a way. But I think we will get to that point later on.
Yeah. But one of the things I explained in the previous, well, not the previous one, the two programs before, was we always want to try and educate the viewers as well. And we get it quite often that people don't think we should rightly be here. And I looked into the history a bit and I explained that we were part of the Commonwealth, and I've done a bit further research. And when the British Empire was around and alive, it covered so much of the globe. And that spanned from Australia, Canada, India, South Africa, other parts of Africa, the Caribbean. And we are also part of the Commonwealth. And the British actually stayed and ruled in India for 200 years. And only in 1947, when they left, that's when Pakistan and India was created and independent states were created. But I also mentioned that because we were a part of the Commonwealth, we supported them in the world wars. We supported them in rebuilding the countries. So if we weren't part of the Commonwealth, if we didn't support them at that time, the country we live in today potentially wouldn't be here. So can you just tell us a bit about the history of the Netherlands, like, because I know they were also a colony, such as were France and Portugal?
Yeah, so all the way in the back, of course, in the 1800s. So Holland has got a history of colonialism, and that was back in that day, and it's been, I think, on the top of my head, it's been stopped, I think, in 1862 or something like that. So it's over 150 years that slavery doesn't exist anymore. And especially after the Second World War, when that ended, a lot of ethnic groups came to Holland as well, especially Turkish, Moroccan citizens, to contribute to make Holland, how do you call it? So to build up Holland again, basically.
Rebuild, yeah.
Because due to the Second World War, yeah, it was pretty much the economy was collapsed. And from then on, all the way to 2020, basically.
And why do you think that the discrimination or racism still exists in Holland then? Is there anything that stands out for you?
Well, I think it's mainly, of course, a problem with education, I think, because it isn't a natural thing, because let's be honest, we all are human beings. Yes, we have different colors. Yes, we have different religions and all that kind of stuff. But if you look at children, for instance, at school, or when we are born, we are not born racist. So it's been taught to people. And the main question is why does it still exist, and what can we do about it today? But mainly, I'm a fan of education. I think before the children go to school, you have to get educated back at home, even at a young age. So if we have all, let's say we all have a common dream that in every household, the father and the mother teaches their child that we are all equal, we are all human beings. And despite having our differences, we are entitled to have those differences, and that we do not judge people by color, but by their content of their character, like Dr. King said back in the day.
Brilliant. You're making very interesting points, Mark, and I think majority of the people, even in the United Kingdom or England more specifically, agree with that. I've noticed myself that as times are going on, the amount of racism our elders faced, we're not facing, but the amount we face, what we want to do is try and progress within society, and we want our children and the younger generations to have even less of these struggles and problems. You see, but on the other hand, I've got a bit of a concern where I think that where it becomes the white supremacists, the far right, whether it's the football hooligans or the people who think completely opposite to that, I think that number of people are growing as well, because with all this Black Lives Matter movement that's going on, for me, it seems like it's kind of becoming a race war. People seem to be missing what the actual bigger picture is, that there's a group of people who've been discriminated against, treated unfairly for a number of years. But on the other side, there's loads of people who are actually not supporting, but going against. So my fear also is, as much as we live in really good countries, we're accepted, we have legislation, we can practice our own religions and beliefs and have our own culture, which is important. I'm afraid that there's other groups as well, which seem to be growing bigger and stronger. So is it something that's similar within the Netherlands, would you think?
Yeah, because I think mainly, I mean, I don't have the numbers, but I think that the group of racist people are a minority as well. I think,
Mm.
thank God, we can
Yeah.
say that. But I think we also have to practice what we preach. So we have to be a good example for ourselves, for instance.
Yeah.
So if you deal with hate, then usually you have at least two options, maybe more, but you can answer hate with hate, which does not lead, I think, to a solution. But you can
Mhm.
answer it also with love and with your own values. You can be the better guy because
Yeah.
you can make a change of the world. It starts all with yourself,
Yeah.
small gestures, and if you stand for that, and if you do believe that, you can inspire people to follow you as well and to join what we say, to have common sense. That is not, I mean, basically racism is stupid if you think about it.
Mhm.
Just thinking that you are better than someone else based on what? Based
Yeah.
on color, based, I mean, that's, maybe it's an ego thing, maybe it's an ignorance thing, but we definitely have to solve that problem. But I think we always have to focus on similarities first, because I
Yeah.
think a lot of people start the wrong way. They start with focusing on the differences, and then
Mhm.
you can see that people are not growing together, but
Yeah.
going far further and further from each other.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to add, Murat, as well, is that not only from the program I've been watching, but also with my own personal experiences, is that we have a part to play in this too. And I think the part we have to play is trying to bridge them gaps. So, like you says, our own beliefs are you focus on yourself, try to better yourself, and lead by example. And when we want to
Yes,
practice what we preach, our actions obviously speak louder than words. But I've even come across many English people I've worked with, or even people from various ethnic backgrounds. And because I built that relationship with them, they were comfortable to come to me and ask me these certain questions. So one of the things, I'm not sure if it exists in the Turkish culture as much, but arranged marriage is quite common between Pakistanis. And one of the questions I get asked quite often is that does if somebody comes with an arranged marriage proposal, are you allowed to say no? And it's not necessarily their fault. It's just that these people haven't had the opportunity to actually integrate, to speak to people, to come across someone who they think, oh, he won't get offended. I'm comfortable enough to ask him. And I think this is where a lot of the divide takes place, where the people who are still really stuck of backwards thinking and they haven't moved on with the times and they haven't
yeah,
accepted that there are other races, there are other cultures, they are here to stay. I know loads of people, we get tarnished a bit more if it's an ethnic minority within the media, but there's still loads of people here doing positive stuff, contributing to the economy, supporting each other on a day-to-day basis. So I think it's important that we try to build them bridges, go out there, speak to people, welcome them, explain them. And even in the program, there was a really good dialogue which took place between one of our English girls and one of the girls from an African Caribbean background. And she said that we're proud of our culture and we don't mind people asking, but we just want them to be respectful about it. And on the flip side, the English girl was saying that sometimes we're a bit afraid to ask because we don't want to come across a certain way, or I don't want people just to label me racist. So we need to be careful with that as well, that sometimes people genuinely just don't know and they're not comfortable enough to ask. And if they think, oh, if I ask this girl this thing, does she think I'm going to be racist? So it's always that balanced approach that it works two ways, that we have to try and do our part to welcome people and help them understand. And they need to be comfortable and respectful in order to learn more about us, I guess.
Can I just, I was actually rephrasing the question which Mohsen actually early on mentioned. Uh, what I see is the world phenomena. If you think in UK, this time the Conservative government win the election on the basis of lot of the Europeans here and things like this, and this is the biggest reason this time. Uh, Tory party win in UK on that basis, and that's really like you mentioned is growing the tension. Like Mohsen said, there's a lot of people's growing on that, and that base they actually win the election, and they had somebody who's a mouth like Nigel Farage and is throwing all sorts of things in there. I
Yeah.
think Mohsen question was there. I think Mr. Murad to you. There must be some hardcore, people are in there. They're probably in the minority, but sometimes they play a bigger role. I can feel they play a bigger role this time to Tory to win the elections because they were actually against anybody who came from the other part of the country. Even they came and actually served for them and all sorts of things. So I think that was the question. I mean, I'm taking you away from the question, but I thought you didn't answer it, or probably this is exactly same thing happening in Europe because to us who've been sitting in UK, we anything the other side of sea is Europe. I know is Holland, Germany, all, but I think you guys are living next to each other. You probably have a bit more current to find out what's kind of a thing. If you can explain a little bit that.
Yeah, so I mean, in Holland, we are being brought up. It's very mixed, and maybe it's even more mixed than in the UK. I don't know exactly about that, but maybe you guys confirm that. So, but it's of course, I mean, it's also a way of populism, of course. So it is a minority, I think, who are racist, but of course they will get all the attention, and if they have more influence, it can spread out, and people can they can make it better. It's also a way of how do you call it? Being an image, which is largely based on. Usually, they are not using facts, so it's always. But usually, it will also occur when things are not going good in a country. At least, I mean, what I'm viewing and what I'm seeing in Holland. So if there's something not going good, let's say the economy or education, whatever, there will always you will always have people who are going to blame the natural people who are to blame off. So they don't have solution for those problems, but then they will say something like, "Oh well, that's due to the foreigners coming in this country and taking our jobs," and all that kind of stuff. But I think it's spread out the world, but it's also ignorance, of course, because all of those people who are complaining about that, they should ask themselves, but what did you do to contribute to this country? Just having a nationality alone to that country doesn't make you contribute to the country itself. Because if the truth is you don't work, you don't go to school, you don't do anything, you don't help people, then you can ask yourself, well, okay, what can I do, or what am I doing for my country, instead of being angry at other people who are trying to make something out of their lives. Just be angry at you, or make a positive change. Because if you don't change, I think, the way you are thinking, you will just repeat yourself, and it's just a cycle. Then you have to break it. You have to
100%.
be open for other assumptions.
Yeah. Look, just to add to your point as well, Murray, you've just jogged my memory. Very good point. I come across a video the other day on social media, and there was a gentleman from the ethnic minority group, and he was like a presenter, and he went to this area, and it was where a lot of far-right extreme type of people thinking were. And there was an English chap there, and he said, "I've seen videos of you before where you've been using terms against Pakistanis or people from African Caribbean background, and you've been using racist terms." And that guy was that ignorant. He was like, "But I'm not racist, though. That's what they are. And if I'm able to speak, and they think it's acceptable." And he says, "But why is it that you've got a problem with them?" And he's like, "Well, it's because it's my right." And there's also people like this, which seems to be in a growing number. And he's claiming they don't contribute to society. So the chap presenting says, "Well, are you currently contributing to society?" And he goes, "No." But he goes, because I'm white, I'm English, it's my right to sit here. And so I think a lot of people have that mindset as well. Luckily, we are fortunate. There's so many forward-thinking people here, and we're in a country where we are protected. But then there's also this type of group as well, where their mindset, unfortunately, is on the other end. Just because they have no job, they didn't work hard, they didn't study hard, they haven't got much going on in their personal lives. That anger and frustration they're using, they're venting it to elsewhere, but it's like an excuse based on what we're trying to say. It's just an excuse for them to make themselves feel better. There's so many times people have said, all these people are coming from Eastern Europe and they're taking our jobs. That's been the latest trend. But they don't understand that these people are coming in, starting at rock bottom, willing to do the jobs that they're not willing to do, and work their way up. And the same applied for us. The wave that came before the Eastern Europeans was the Asian wave. and before that it was a Caribbean wave. But all of us started at rock bottom. What I think our mindset coming from other cultures and different areas around the world is that, yeah, we didn't have the opportunities or the infrastructure in our homelands which we could get here, and our forefathers were willing to take that risk for a better life for the next generation. And we carry that mentality with us, that we want to be a bit more appreciative. I've got an opportunity here. If we were still living in Pakistan, I may not have that. Fair enough, that country is only 70 odd years old. It's still developing. It's got loads of other historical issues as well, but we won't get too far into that. But we've come with the mentality that we're willing to work hard. We're willing to do the jobs that other people aren't willing to do. And if we become successful someday, we shouldn't be hated on. Granted, I know there are a lot of people from our cultures that do a lot of wrong as well, but that stigma seems to stick, and we don't want it to stick.
Right. I mean, I'm just related to that. To be honest, obviously, I want to take the discussion slightly further. I'm totally agree with both of you. Basically, anybody who actually, especially when we call Asians and from Turks or whoever it is, or the Caribbeans and everything else, they came, they work hard, they done them work, which is these guy doesn't want to do it. They built it up, and if they built it up, they're gone further. Right? They don't like it. Certain people, not everybody, and at the same time, they are very saying is the very equal society, human rights, and everything else. But I seen very realistically, I will never find anybody from ethnic background, Asians, whoever it is, they never hit the key post. They probably be more qualified, but they never hit the key post. The reason why they don't want to give you, you probably work hard, you probably have a more degree, you have a more experience, and you will see somewhere down the line, you will not be accepted on such a key post. And that's what I always see. Reason why I'm saying, when you do, especially somebody who's fully qualified and he thinks he deserves to have that post, because you're not giving him the job because he's from the ethnic minority, you are actually creating problem for yourself. Because normally what we really say, you want to put right man for the right job, not because of his color. So
Yeah.
this is what we need to give a message in this program. Look, if somebody who deserves it, no matter who color it, which color is that, he deserves to have a key post. He'll do a good for the country, and he will feel more acceptable. Because
Yeah.
when you guys need these Asians or whoever you want them to come here, they work like a dog. They used to live in one house, 15 of them to really work in factories and all that, right? Okay. Obviously, they work hard. They was not chilling, like they're not spending money sillily, right? They were saving and really building it up. Some people who actually made very successful model, and they are actually sometimes living comfortable than anybody else. But that's due to their hard work.
Yeah.
Why I can't understand why people have these type of stigma. I'll bring that to you back.
If I can jump in first, Fame, what you're saying is true, but what I also like to add is that I think it is slowly dying out. There are more and more people from ethnic minorities who are getting these opportunities now. So if we look at a political example, we've got the mayor of London is Muslim, is Sadiq Khan. We are slowly seeing more people in parliament. Even in jobs I've worked in, even though it might have been one or two people, there were people in management positions who were of an ethnic background. On the flip side, it still does exist. Not as much, it's slowly creeping out. But I myself have been denied opportunities in the past because my face didn't fit, and I might have been the best person for the job. But it's not only an issue within race, it's also an issue between genders as well. So only till more so recently have females actually started getting posts, which they probably would have been better at males in, but there was a discrimination towards them as well. So I think there's various discriminations within the UK that are slowly breaking away, but it takes people like ourselves to raise this awareness. And I think this is one of the things that I really liked about the programme I watched with the school in South London is they're the first school within the country to try this. And the aim of the game is to end racism, and they discovered something new, and that is unconscious. So if the next generation, they can adapt and they can change and they can realise it's actually a problem. And a lot of them did say that. They realise that, you know what, this is a problem which we didn't know of. But because they've gone through this experiment, this project, they've realised that. One of the things that also I wanted to add is that throughout the course of it, it was actually quite emotional. There was loads of good points, loads of learning curves from it, and a lot of them didn't think in the first place that our skin color mattered, but then going through the process, they understood even more. I think, just to add to our other points, where there are ignorant people, unfortunately, the education, the influence, if we have the elders and the parents thinking a certain way, that these people are bad, they're always wrong because of the color of their skin, their children are also then being taught that and having that same mentality. And I think with other ethnic minorities coming into this country and getting these better jobs and trying to provide better education for their children, there might be a growth of the English children born here thinking like that. I hope not. I don't really think it will get to that stage, but so how our elders wanted our generation to do better than them, we want our younger generation to do better than us and to go through less struggles and challenges that we went through. So it does exist, but I like to think in the UK, it is slowly creeping out. And even a couple of brothers of mine, they are in managers' positions, they do a great job, and it's nice to see that they are getting given these opportunities.
Yeah, and I think the Dutch point of view, actually, this topic is a major topic in Holland as well. I mean, it still also exists in Holland. I mean, it does matter if let's say there's a vacancy and there are two people are applying for that job, that position. It does matter what your name is, unfortunately. I mean, a very common name in Holland is Jan, let's say Jan, a native Dutch guy, and the other guy, let's say his name is Muhammad. Then, unfortunately, there are some main cases where there was discrimination just prior to the intake, that people are just not getting an invitation based on his name. But actually, if you look at his resume, he is even better, or he is the right man for the job. But you can also, so there's visible racism, of course, if someone is spoken out, you can hear it. Yeah, of course, that's the easy one. But I think there's also like hidden racism, and they can mask that with alternatives. So, for example, they're not giving you, if they have to reply on your email, they're not going to say in the email, well, I'm not going to invite you because your name is Mohammed, because that is not allowed by law. So they know that they will get in trouble. For instance, then they will reply with, well, thank you for applying for the job. We have looked at it, but we prefer someone else because he has far more experience, or something like that. But actually, this is and was a great topic in the Netherlands, and there has been cases that even in the government, even up there, that they have act on a wrong way, and they're being sentenced as well. So it still exists.
Do you know what? One of the things, again, I want to keep referring to this program because of how good I thought it was. My niece also watched it, and I had to explain a bit to her that she understood in terms of how they came to a conclusion when they did the tests initially. I think, so they're all given tablets, and they were given pictures of children which were from an ethnic minority background, and they were also given words. And then on the second half, it was a similar thing, but with white children faces and different type of words. And subconsciously, the ones with the white faces and the names were more positive, and the other ones ended up being negative. And out of everyone in that class and everyone who took that test, only 4 came up neutral, only 4 were not biased. And these are kids, and like we said before, they're innocent, they're pure, they're not born racist, it's something that's taught. But even these kids, they were not taught it, but there seems to be something that seems to be influencing them. I'm not sure what the media is like in the Netherlands, but I do know it does influence a lot of people within this country. And one of the ways I try to explain it to her is, if I was walking down the street and a crime's taken place and 3 people walk out of a shop, one might be black, one might be Asian, one might be white. From what the media and what the influence is, we don't know which one of them did it. But because of the bias, because of the stereotypes that are portrayed, because there's more emphasis on trying to tarnish certain groups and sects and beliefs and not so much on the others, automatically in your head, you're going to think it's probably the Asian one or it's probably the black one, and the white one might be innocent. But this is unfortunately how it's programmed within people, within the Western world, unfortunately, that even though they don't know it, just adding to your point, Murat, unconsciously, they are being biased. And when they get older and more influences take place, it may shape them in another way.
Even
Can I, before you guys come in, because the viewers actually asking the question, I'm bringing it to you. You guys can read it and answer it. That'd be more ideal.
So, Mr. Lela Kessalon, the program in question was brilliant. If it gets implemented in the curriculum, it will make a huge difference to children's understanding of each other's experience, especially someone from an ethnic background. Just to add to Lela's point, a lot of people have watched this show, and I'm encouraging a lot more people to watch it. This is one of the reasons why I really love being British, because we are British and we are Pakistani, and there's good that we can take from each. I'm very happy that there has been a school which is willing to take this opportunity. They've realised something isn't right in society. The children involved have realised something isn't right in society, and we want to do something better, that moving forward we don't face these issues, because it's not fair. And as you said, it is just a skin colour. So they've taken this project, and I know as a result of it, they've decided to change their curriculum. They're changing the way they teach. Because when we were in school, we were taught a history a certain way. And I don't mean to be harsh, but I'm here to speak the truth. And the way it was taught was that everything that the British and the English did over the years was always right. But when you get older and you do some research for yourself, you realise that that wasn't actually the truth. That wasn't actually fact. Yeah, they may have done many good, but for example, if they went to India, they were there for 200 years. When they left, they took everything with them and left. And it's left India and Pakistan in the states and stages they were, because all the resources that were there were taken by the British. We were there as second and third class citizens. We were there as slaves in our own countries. So we're taught and painted a certain picture within our schools, but the reality of something is very, very different. Even then, I know Winston Churchill, people were trying to protect his statue from being vandalized, which to an extent I understand. He was an iconic figure. He did a lot for the country. He helped him win the war. But on the flip side, there was also something called the Bengal famine, where he purposely starved and said that Indians breed like animals and we don't want them to carry on producing. And he starved them, and thousands and even maybe millions of people died. And people don't understand that. So we know some people in life have done a lot of good. They may have done a lot of bad also, but then we're promoting these people as iconic figures and actually not realizing what the whole truth is. So then for this school to go ahead and change the curriculum, and some of the examples I want to give is that they're going to start teaching about Black history. So the students who were the English students have expressed that we want to know more about you guys, but we're a bit worried how we're meant to ask, because we don't want to come across racist or ignorant. And it's a totally understandable and a fair point, and it's not their fault. And I think that's common with the adults in British society as well. They just didn't get the opportunity. They didn't get a chance to learn. They don't really know. They're a bit confused. If the only information they're getting is what the mainstream media is giving, even though it's very biased, unfortunately, that's just the only information they know. So they also add in, just to refer back to this school, is that Asian cultures as well. So there's so many different cultures. And at one stage, they did like a show and tell, where everyone got to bring in things from their own heritage and things from their own culture. And it was really nice that they got to share this experience with loads of other people. And it opened their eyes up as well. And it was a really nice piece. But I think that's one of the main things, that it's good to see one school's taking that step and that change. And it'd be nice, because when I was in school, I would have liked to have learned a lot more as well about Black history. I've learned about it in my adult years out of my own accord. I've learned about my Islamic history. We know the Ottoman Empire was very big as well. We never learned anything about that in school. But there's so much that shaped this world, and there's so much that shaped this country, but we're only told a very small percentage, and it's always like a certain narrative, but it's not the whole picture, and it's not actually always a real story either.
Just what I'd say, Brother Murad, obviously you from Turkey, aren't you? Right? Originally. Mm.
Yeah, so I'm born and bred. I'm born and bred in the Netherlands, but my parents come from there. Yeah.
Okay. So how do you relate that what Mohsen has mentioned? Obviously, you guys must have some kind of history, and then your forefathers and everything else. Did you relate what Mohsen said? And have you have anything to say to our viewers?
So when you were in school in the Netherlands, is it very similar? Is it history and your education only taught a certain way, whereas your cultural history, there's a lot more to it as well, isn't there?
Well, actually, so I'm from I'm born in '83, when I have to think about my childhood, actually back in the day in the Netherlands, they emphasize more on multicultural societies. They yeah, there was more accepted. Actually, it was more accept. So I think we have gone worse
You gone
through
back?
time, because back in the day it was more accepted. Yes, yes.
But then what
So,
do you think
but the thing,
that's changed that now? Because we're thankfully in Britain, we're going in a progressive way, which is always very nice to see. And we're a lot more accepted and we're allowed to progress and have careers and things like that. So I'm surprised actually that you're going the opposite way.
yeah. So, for instance, myself, I am the third generation, and every generation had its own difficulties. Of course, I mean, the first generation had the more different. I mean, you have to see it on the timeline, or on that period of time. So they had other difficulties. So they came into a country, they did not speak the language, everything was foreign, they were not used to Holland. Of course, there's a language barrier, so that leads to problems, and they just have been working pretty much. They didn't have time to get an education, but by then the government didn't emphasize on education as well, because the mindset was, we are bringing them here, they have to work, they have to boost the economy, and that's it. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, 30, 40 years later, then now people, the younger generation, but also the older generation, are accusing the first generation and the second generation about, well, how is it possible that you're living for 40 years in a country and still does not speak or don't speak the language quite well? So that's a very harsh thing to say to people who came here and just, worked for 16, 17 hours a day under very bad conditions.
Yeah.
So, and then, you have the second and the third generation. But if I have to speak about my generation, well, I'm born here. So it doesn't matter when. My father always taught me, you have to be strong, you have to be confident, and you have to be educated. Then you can demand your place in society. Don't allow anyone to make you feel as a foreigner.
Yeah.
Because you are born here. You're also a child of Holland. So let's say there's someone that's coming up to me and tell me to go back to my own country, or he's not seeing me. Yeah, that's still common. I mean, he's like, well, you're Turkish, so he doesn't want to see the Dutch side of me, or they want you to choose one side, which is very odd as well. It's like that you have to choose between your parents. That's not natural. I mean, I had the privilege to be brought up by two cultures. That's the Dutch culture and the Turkish culture, of course. And I think it's an asset for the country. I think it's an asset to society, because I can look at the society from different angles.
Yeah.
So I'm also fluent on both languages as well, and I think that's very important. But so I usually tend to answer ignorance with education. I mean, I'm always striving to have a dialogue. If it doesn't, if it isn't successful, then I will go over to a monologue. If they don't want to listen, it doesn't matter. But the thing is, I do not need approval from others to make me feel Dutch. Because one time, let me give you an example. It was at a working place, and there was a guy, very ignorant guy, and he told me, like, you will never be a Dutch guy. Well, and then I asked him, like, okay, why do you think that? Or how do you feel about it? And he told me, well, you're not a natural Dutch guy. You don't look Dutch. You don't seem Dutch. You don't speak Dutch. So then I told that guy, okay, well, please, for me, I'm trying to understand the way you are thinking. Can you explain to me how a Dutch guy looks like? Is a Dutch guy, is it a tall guy? Is the small guy? Is the fat guy? Is the thin guy? Does a Dutch guy have blue eyes or brown eyes? Does a Dutch guy has blonde hair or green hair? Because we have got a lot of them. So I was trying to teach him about being Dutch, or it doesn't matter which nationality, has nothing to do with the way you look.
100%.
It has everything to do with the nationality, which is written down in the Constitution, that you have that nationality. Because even himself, how do you know that you're 100% Dutch guy? Or What does that even mean? Do you know your entire history? I don't think so. So that's my response to people who are ignorant. And I say, I'm as Dutch as you. I'm born here. I did go to the same schools. We were being raised in the same neighborhoods. And the fact that I have another nationality doesn't make me less Dutch.
Yeah, we've said it.
I just want to comment because you guys have mentioned the third generation, and early on, me and Mohsen had a program with the first generation, second. Obviously, a lot of our older, we did criticize them. They stuck with their old values, right? Okay, and sometimes them old values are becoming a nuisance values because they're not really moving into the what is the society changing anyway. Society changing all over the world is similar. Obviously, when you in different subcontinent, you got to really take everything kind of an intake. So we did criticize, but saying that, I'm just got a point to make here. Uh, Being Asian, we have a very, very strong family system, right? Okay. And believe me, I can see that very clearly is missing in an English culture. If we see any of our family members, we go out of the way to help. And this is what we get it from our parents who actually might be the old school, might be stuck up in their way, right? Okay. But that's really inherent to us because we've been following and they really stick with the family oriented. So it can be positive as well. I'm just throwing that question to you guys.
Yeah, well, just to add to both your
Definitely.
points is that we're very proud of our culture. We're very proud to be British, but we're also very proud to be Pakistani. So when someone's going to say you're this, that, and the other, I'm accepting it. I was like, yeah, I know I am, because like Faheem saying, we bring a lot to the table which others may not have. And just to add to your other point as well, is that it's common actually within Britain. It was invaded that many times, whether it was the Vikings or the Romans or whoever else have you. If they were to go and trace back their history and the DNA, there's no such thing as English or pure English. If you're going to go into history, we are all foreigners on this land. The same rule of thumb applies to America, and it probably applies to a lot of the world. When Christopher Columbus went to America, he claimed, I discovered this land. He didn't. It was a land of people, the Native Americans, that already lived there. And why is it one of the most powerful countries in the world now? It's because of foreigners. Because everyone went there from Ireland, from Italy, from various parts of the world till this day, and it's built the country to be where it is now. And it's similar with England. We know we're a minority. We're about 14 to 15% of ethnic minorities, and the rest is white. We know they have their preference, their culture. We're not here to take away their culture. We're not here to like change the way they want to live. We're here to live our own lives. If we see things from a British culture and we like it and we can benefit from it, we accept it. But if we have our own morals and principles and we live a life slightly different way, just let us carry on living our lives as well. I understand there's good and bad in all. We all do. But unfortunately, not everyone sees the world that way. I think the other thing people don't seem to understand is, and I only learned this today as well from the program, the question was asked, what percentage of DNA do you think is the same as one another? And the answer ended up being 99.9%. So we are all 99.9%, we have the same DNA. There's only 0.1% of our DNA, of our genetics, that's actually makes us different. And the shock was, I'm still shocked myself, but one thing that really made me laugh was there was a young lad from the African Caribbean descent, and when he got told this, he turned to the teacher and said, does that mean Donald Trump's my brother? But it is funny to hear that, because we actually have a lot more in common. And if you're going to go by science, science is saying we have a lot more in common. But then if you go into religion, we believe we all came from Adam and Eve. So the science will actually match the religious theory as well, that if we all come from the one mother and the one father, and as generation and times have come on, our skin colors have become different, our languages have become different, our sense of style, taste, beliefs have become a bit different. But even when it comes to religious aspect, we all believe, well, in Islam we believe, we came from Adam and Eve. So that does all make us brothers and sisters. Another thing I want to add also is that when it comes to skin color, it's not that hard to understand why people have different skin color. The closer to the equator you live, the darker your skin is going to be, because of the fact that there's more sun around. And as time's gone on and the genetics have changed a little bit, it's just the way we are. So even if I look at Pakistanis, There are Pakistanis with blonde hair and blue eyes in certain areas, and there are some who are darker skinned, some who are lighter skinned. But at the end of the day, we're all Pakistanis. We're not going to look and say, you're a dark one and you're a light one. You're all still Pakistanis. And the same thing applies to the human race as well. There's a lot more that we have in common than we do differences. And I've said this many times before, and it surprises me, and I can't understand why people seem to think like that. Your religious beliefs, yeah, they may be different, but to prejudge someone and stereotype and be a bias just because of the color of their skin, it is still an issue, unfortunately.
Yes, and I think it's still very stupid, because you cannot explain a logic, a sensible reason why would you judge someone based on, skin color. I mean, who can answer that question?
I mean, I think the way Mohsen put it across, right? Okay, I think a lot of viewers, a lot of English friends of ours, they probably relate to it. The reason why we're saying there is a very solid point Mohsen has made there. If you look the genetic and you look in every angle, uh, people who live in Africa, I mean, I think if I've been living, if not to the genetic, I might have that kind of a problem. It's just one of them things. Uh, I think my signal was going, but anyhow. So basically, what we're really saying here, there's a lot of things to look into it, and all this hatred business is actually needs to be get out of the system. All these people who done all the bad. I'm just giving you an example, like Mohsen said, it might be a very big leader who actually in UK, but he's killed loads of people, starved to death. What are you going to say about that? What kind of a legacy is this, right? When we talk about Hitler, how do we talk about him? You know,
Yeah.
so it's like sometimes certain things people glorify. There might be people living in Germany who follow Hitler. They think he's the great man in the bloody world. But when you really see what kind of activities he was doing, basically he was not doing anything good to the humankind. When you really take overall prospect, then you realize somebody who is actually the right side in the world or who is in the wrong side of the world. So I think these kind of debate, I think they will really make a lot of people aware of it. I
Yeah.
think we have nearly 13 minutes left from the program. What we try to do, we'll have a little bit more debate, try to take it towards what positive Brother Murad can see. I see a lot of positive here. Obviously, a lot of our viewers, when they're going to see later on, because somehow a lot of our viewers will see later on, and we will have the feedback. Normally, most of us do that.
Yeah.
But I think this program, we need to bring it into last 10, 11 minutes. You give your piece, and we can try to, let's do it for next time as well.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I want to add is because we are here to be positive, we are going to talk about issues that consist within the world, within the culture, and whatever we feel we need to talk about. And this has obviously been a hot topic with everything that's been going on. But it's always important that we want to try and also find solutions. And again, I've probably referred to the program many times that I watched just earlier on today, but I think that is one way we're going to achieve it. One way where we want to try and reduce discrimination or racism or people being biased towards others just based on their skin colour. I think if all the institutions within the country adapted a different approach, changed the curriculum slightly. So yeah, it's important to talk about the British history because we are here, we are British born. So we do need to know because they did achieve a lot. They did offer a lot to the world. For an island that was so small, to have control of about 20% of the population at that time is a big achievement. So the British and the English have achieved a hell of a lot within the world. And we're fortunate to be in a country like this, that we're not in a different part of the world where bombs are being dropped on them. They haven't got no food, no shelter, no water. So we are very, very lucky. On the other hand, though, even myself, and even from the program I watched, people do want to learn about others. People do like to learn about others. People are a lot more accepting of one another this day and age as well. But I think the younger we start, the better it will be. So if I'm having people in the adult life coming and asking me questions for 30 or 40 years of their life, they wouldn't have had an idea. They've just got a perception, which was probably false, but they never had that opportunity. So we can't blame them. It's not necessarily ignorant either on their part. They just never had the opportunity to know and to learn. Education is one of them things that we coming from an ethnic background, appreciate a lot, because again, our elders never really got that chance. Like you said, Murat, the elder generations came here and it was just to work. And we're fortunate that we can read books, we can use the technology, we can find answers and solutions very easily. So for me, one of the main things I'd like to see is moving forward is the mainstream or every school to start changing and listening and talking about different types of history. If we talk and learn more about Black history, we're more likely to be understanding to situations which are taking place today. And the Black Lives Matter movement, more people would be aware of it, that this is the history of this people. We can't rewrite history, but we can change what we do moving forward. What's happened in the past has happened, the damage has been done, but us as a generation and as a society, how are we going to do to overcome it? And I think learning about other cultures, whether it's the Ottoman Empire, the Persian Empire, whatever it is, but I think it'd be nice to have a more diverse approach within the education system where we can learn more about the globe. Because I think we are more of a global society now. What happens in America, we know. What happens in Europe, we know. Information's so easy to come and pass across. The music we listen to, I listen to music from various parts of the world. It's that much easy. It is a whole global issue also. So in order to change it, I think we need to learn more about the globe as well and the people within it and the struggles and challenges they've faced. So I think that's one thing I'd like to see moving forward.
Can I add something on the topic as well?
Yeah, of course, of course.
Yeah, of course.
So I'm also a believer in, I don't think that government can legislate love between people with the interaction. So I think it's also a responsibility of people to coming together, have a natural interest in one in each other. And the main thing is respect each other. You are you and I am I. I mean, if we can respect each other, and what I said before, focus on similarities instead of differences, will go a long way. And if parents took their parenthood also seriously, that you can educate your kids from 2 years, 3 years old, if you can educate them like, hey, everybody's saying we are all equal, but we have different ways of living, thinking, whatever. You're also entitled to that. If we can start at a young age, I think we can move forward. And I want to quote Dr. King. Back in the day, he said, if you can fly, run. If you can run, walk. If you cannot walk, crawl. But by all means, keep moving. And I think that should be the message also for people. Don't get depressed about things, what is going on in the country, but always think, okay, what can I do to contribute to that or to find a solution to that problem?
Yeah. The thing is, with struggles like this, sorry, Faheem, these things happen in time. But it takes people to have a certain mindset to understand that there's a problem and there's an issue. How are we going to deal with it? So myself, I think our generation, we are a lot more accepted. We don't face as much racism and discrimination as the elders did. We can be in better positions, and that's a sign of progress. Will it ever completely finish? I don't know. I doubt it. But the aim of the game is to have our youngsters be able to be more accepted in society and not go through the challenge that we're going through. And that's why I think the points you're making are definitely brilliant. But also, if the education can be implemented so that others who are potentially likely to discriminate won't discriminate because their mindset's going to be changed. But it is a long game. It is a long process. It is something that still exists, and we need to always strive towards it.
I'm totally agree with both of you guys. The only thing I differ here, basically, is all depend what type of a government is there. Say, for example, the government. Say, for example, I'm talking about the India here. The Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, he hates every other race because he thinks he's a superior race, right? And he creates so much hatred in country, even his own country. India is verge of breaking 3 places, right? This is what we can see it, right? And he's really kind of using this bad word, fingering everywhere, surrounding the countries, right? Okay, to try to dictate. He's the big daddy of it, right? So basically, it does affect the government policies as well, right? So we can't really let this government get away with it, because if they keep a zero tolerance and no discrimination, then you should have no problem. I mean, obviously, the points you make is definitely social media, why I'm saying, as in me, you, everybody in the social media, this is the tool. Basically, we will be really share these kind of thoughts. We will be really moving a lot of minds thinking on a positive angle, right?
Yeah.
We can easily do that, and that's what we can easily do that. Basically, the whole purpose of this, uh, we can really give a positive message, and the positive message is we can do a lot more. We can easily do a lot more, right? So what in the I'm just trying to conclude, and you guys can put your point of view across.
Yeah.
Government has to do, and pressure created by people like us to let government to realize, don't play a political game with us. Don't do it because you're gonna get white votes or because they are in majority, and then you will play every trick in the trade. Same thing is in India. Hindu is in the majority and he's playing every trick in the trade and beating everybody who's any other race, Muslims, low caste, loads of other peoples. So
Yeah.
basically, we need to stop these type of people, and we can always raise the voices, even voices here. Mr. Our Prime Minister, sometimes he says certain things totally unbelievable,
Yeah.
but we really always question him. Look, you can't do that, and basically, it's kind of everybody saying international scenario is everything is equal. Reality is
It's
little
not.
bit sucks, right? But we need to keep
Yeah.
making voices. I mean, you want to conclude, Mohsen, and Brother Murad want to say anything, and we can finish the program.
Yeah, thank you once again, Murat, for first of all joining
Yeah.
us. You made some really good points, and yeah, Fame, you've
Thank
hit
you
the
for
nail on
having
the
me.
head that there are going to be many people who are in power positions who have their own narrative, who are going to be biased, who are just going to try and push their way. But I think it's important that if we, as a people, as a public, remember and realize that we are the human race, and look at and remember that what makes us stronger is unity. Everyone has their own struggles. We all need to try and support each other in our own struggles. But I think more often is just be more open with one another and be willing to learn about one another. Because if the majority, there may be leaders on top, but if the majority of the public are going to rise up and go against it, whether it's in protest, whether it's in talks like this, where we're trying to raise the awareness and share that knowledge, we've all got our part to play. One of the other things I want to say
Well,
about,
guys,
sorry, Murat, one of
yeah,
the other things I
well,
just wanted to add about being positive as well is that within the program there was one girl who was mixed race, and her name was Farah, and she reminded me very much of my niece. And Farah, when it came to one point of the program, the white students had to go into one room and the ethnic stayed in the other, and she was stuck in the middle. And she ended up sharing a story later on and said that she is actually brown skinned, and she goes, I wanted to be white because of when she looks at the magazines, when she looks at the media, anything and everything that's shown her, it showed that white was beautiful, and that ended up affecting her negatively. But by doing this project, by people sharing their stories and their experiences, she's had a positive experience out of it now, and she's realized that having your own culture, having a different skin color actually isn't all too bad. So it's about learning about one another and getting over these differences.
Right. Thank you, Mohsen. I think Brother Murad has some technical problem.
No
Uh,
problem.
Very nice of him to really come and join that. We learn a lot more things in, especially in Netherlands. In future reference, we'll definitely call him
Yeah.
in further programs. In the end, I can only say to all you guys, keep watching Netherlands TV, and mindset is very important. You've got to have a mindset, and it's the right mindset, and that's our programs in. Keep a right mindset. Hopefully, we'll see you next Saturday, same time. Thank you very much, Mohsen, and everybody
Thank you.
else.